6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, this is 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. I'm Neil.
And I'm Beth.
Have you ever had a horrible boss, not been paid enough, or simply got tired of doing the same old boring jobs?
I love presenting 6 Minute English, of course, but some of my previous jobs have been pretty awful, Neil. When I waitressed in cafes, I was on my feet 10 hours a day. It was exhausting.
Most people have had bad work experiences at one time or another. Maybe a job that was boring, badly paid, or just working too much and getting burned out, lacking energy or enthusiasm because of working too hard.
But does it have to be like this? Since most of our waking day is spent at work, how can we make sure our job doesn't make us unhappy? That's what we'll be discussing in this programme, and as usual, we'll be learning some useful new vocabulary as well.
Sounds good, Beth, but first I have a question for you. The worst job I ever had was the summer I spent working as a portable toilet cleaner at music festivals. But according to a recent survey by Forbes magazine, what was voted the worst job in the UK? Was it A, a call centre worker, B, a bartender, or C, a traffic warden?
I think the answer might be a call centre worker.
OK, Beth, I'll reveal the answer later in the programme. Now, it's interesting that survey was carried out in the UK because being unhappy at work could be related to the British working culture, which emphasises working at a fast pace. Here's Damien Grimshaw, a professor of employment studies at King's College London, speaking with BBC Radio 4 programme Analysis.
Really, it's all about pace, cost efficiencies, meeting targets, deadlines. So this is why when people do surveys of what we call work intensity, right? So how hard you work, are you driven on pace? Is there a supervisor breathing down your neck? We score really badly compared to European countries.
Compared to some European countries, British workers have to meet more targets and deadlines, a time or date by which a particular job must be finished.
The pressure to work quickly means you might have your boss breathing down your neck, an idiom meaning that someone is watching you very closely and checking everything you do. Not a nice feeling to have at work.
That's right. A good job is about more than pay and conditions. It's one that uses your talents and gives you some choice over how and when you work. In 2022, Britain's biggest employer, the National Health Service, or NHS, lost more than 15,000 nurses, many quitting because of the long and inflexible working hours.
Another sector with long working hours is the construction industry. Low-paid, dirty and physically demanding, construction workers also risk high levels of work-related injury. Here, Emma Stewart, co-founder of social business Timewise, tells BBC Radio 4 programme Analysis about her trial project to help builders enjoy their jobs more.
In the work that we've done within the construction industry, we have trialled what we would call an output-based way of working, which means we shift away from this sense of presenteeism, this sense of you are paid by the day, you are on site from 7 in the morning until the last person leaves, maybe 7 in the evening, to a task-based way of working, which means you are going to do 5 tasks over the course of this day. When you've done those tasks and you've done them well, you can go home, but we will still pay you the same amount for the day. They were able to deliver the projects that we worked on with them on time, on budget, but critically, the feedback from workers was that work-life balance scores doubled and they were able to reduce the amount of overtime that they did. It's a win-win.
Emma describes the current working patterns using the word presenteeism, staying at work longer than usual or going to work when you're ill to show that you work hard. But this isn't an effective way to work. Emma thinks a task-based approach is better, both at getting the job done and for improving work-life balance, the amount of time you spend at work compared with the amount of time you spend relaxing with your family and doing things you enjoy. In other words, flexible working is a win-win, a situation that's good for everyone involved.
Maybe more flexible working would help some of the jobs I mentioned earlier in my question, Beth. According to a recent Forbes magazine survey, what was voted the worst job in the UK?
I guessed it was a job I've done myself, working in a call centre.
That was the correct answer, although I think my summer job cleaning toilets was even worse. Right, let's recap the vocabulary we've learned from this programme, starting with burnout, lack of energy or enthusiasm because of working too hard.
A deadline is the time by which a particular job must be done.
If someone is breathing down your neck, they're watching you very closely and checking everything you do.
Presenteeism means staying at work longer than usual to show your employer that you work hard and are important to them.
Work-life balance is the amount of time you spend doing your job compared with the amount of time you spend doing things you enjoy.
And finally, a win-win is a situation or result that is good for everyone. Once again, our 6 minutes are up. Join us again next time, but for now, get back to work. Goodbye.
Bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to 6 Minute English. I'm Alice.
And I'm Rob.
So, Rob, did you have a part-time job while you were at university?
Ah, yes, I worked in the student bar.
Ooh, did you learn anything from the experience?
I learned how to pull a decent pint.
Did you learn anything else?
Yes, I learned how to add up.
Didn't they teach you that at school?
Well, I wasn't good at doing sums in my head, mental arithmetic, but I got pretty good at it as a barman. They didn't have computerised cash registers in my day, you see.
Oh, I didn't realise you were that old, Rob. Anyway, the subject of today's show is young business entrepreneurs. So, can you answer this question? How young were the founders of Facebook and Microsoft when they first set up their companies? Were they A, junior high school students, B, high school students, or C, university students?
And Alice, in case you think I don't know, Facebook is an online social networking service and Microsoft is a computer software company, okay?
Very good. Well done.
Well, I'm going to say they were B, high school students.
Well, we'll find out if you chose the right answer later on in the programme. But let's talk now about what drawbacks or disadvantages there are for young entrepreneurs. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I suppose one of the drawbacks of being young and your own boss is that everyone who works for you is older than you.
Is that a drawback?
Well, let's consider a real case. Young British entrepreneur Suleiman Sakani started his first company when he was 17, followed by another business shortly afterwards. Then, while studying chemistry at university, he started his third company, an online version of the Pound Shop, or dollar store in the US, where everything in the shop is priced at £1. Let's listen to Suleiman Sakani talking about his company.
I'm actually quite fortunate now compared to what I was 6 months ago, because now I've got 2 additional directors with grey hair. Commercial meetings are excellent now, But before that, I think I came across quite professional, but you could still tell they were thinking in the back of their heads, I've got a kid sitting in front of me.
So, young entrepreneur Suleiman Sakani has got 2 grey-haired directors working with him now.
That's right. But how does having grey-haired executives on board help, Rob?
Well, executives are people who run a business, and on board means being part of a team. Well, to answer your question, Alice, they bring experience to the table. I have a few grey hairs, You could learn a lot from me.
Oh, I do, Rob, every day. And if you bring something to the table, it means you provide something useful. Well, what do you bring to the table, Rob?
Bad jokes, peanuts, crisps, cups of coffee, that sort of thing.
I was going to say a keen mind, in other words, a well-developed mind, and great business acumen.
Oh, come on, you weren't going to say that.
You're right, I wasn't. Acumen means good judgment, but don't worry, you have an abundant enthusiasm that makes up for it. But moving on now, do you think that school prepared you well for working life?
No, not really. I studied Latin at school and I don't use that much. And maths, well, I never used trigonometry or calculus. So I'm not sure how useful maths lessons were.
Yes, and you only learned to add up in the university bar after all.
Ah, yes, but I'm very good at it. And the point is that I've got a fantastic job now. And if you're really interested in something, you can always acquire or get the skills you don't have. Let's listen to successful young entrepreneur Jessica Rose talking about her experience. She works with jewellery.
I didn't need all these previous skills and experience to go out there and start on my own. When I first started, I had no business training whatsoever, no jewellery training whatsoever, but I kind of woke up one day and thought I'd really love to be a jewellery designer, which is kind of a tricky position to be in because it's, you know, a lot of people would say and did say, well, you're mad.
So, Jessica Rose used her savings to learn jewellery making and then set up her own jewellery making business.
And despite setting out with no business experience and no jewellery training, her enthusiasm for the article paid off.
And that means it was successful.
A bit like me.
Yes. OK, I think it's time for the answer to today's quiz question. I asked, how young were the founders of Facebook and Microsoft when they first set up their companies? Were they A, junior high school students, B, high school students, or C, university students?
I said B, high school students.
And you were wrong, I'm afraid, Rob. Sorry.
Again.
Yes. Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates were both university students when they started their companies. Zuckerberg was studying at Harvard in the US when he launched Facebook in 2004. And Bill Gates took a break from Harvard to launch Microsoft in 1976, but never returned to his studies.
Both at Harvard. That's a coincidence. I wonder if the bar there was any good. Now, can we hear the words we learned today?
Yes, OK. They are drawbacks, executives, on board, bring something to the table, keen, business acumen, acquire, paid off.
Thanks, Alice. Well, that's the end of today's 6-Minute English. We hope you've enjoyed the new vocabulary that we brought to the table.
Oh, very good.
Please join us again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
6-Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to 6-Minute English. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Neil. Sophie, did you go to the corporate away day last week?
Yes, you didn't miss anything. A team-building guru lectured us on how to work more effectively with each other. We gave some presentations, had a few drinks after.
Right, OK. An away day is a day that employees spend together away from their usual workplace. And a guru is an expert in something. So, did this guru teach you anything new, Sophie?
No, not really.
Shame. I was hoping for some tips on how to work more effectively with my co-presenter.
I think we work very effectively already, Neil. Now, today's show is about team building, or encouraging employees to work well together as a team by getting them to engage in different types of activities.
And apparently, some companies in the UK are offering their employees activities such as Hunger Games-style combat days, where teams must work together to kill as many of the opposing team as possible. Have you seen the Hunger Games movies, Sophie?
Yes.
There are also zombie boot camps where military instructors train you on how to fight zombies. That's dead people who have come back to life. For the more cerebral or brainy among us, there are crime investigations modelled on popular TV dramas like Sherlock Holmes.
Well, I'm not sure about the zombie boot camp. A boot camp is a short course of hard physical training. But the Sherlock Holmes away day sounds like fun.
I definitely go for the zombie experience, though I'm not sure how it connects with most people's working lives. Violence, death, the living dead.
Good point.
So let's move on and have today's quiz question. What did Chairman Mao introduce in China in 1951 as a compulsory activity for workers and was reintroduced by the government a few years ago? Was it A, calisthenics, B, calligraphy, or C, English language lessons?
Calisthenics, by the way, is a type of gentle physical exercise.
And calligraphy, by the way, is the art of writing by hand with a special brush.
Well, I'm going for A, calisthenics.
Not English language lessons, Sophie?
No, I'll stick with calisthenics, thanks.
OK, well, we'll find out later if you're right or not. Now, whilst English lessons might sound like hard work, ukulele lessons are apparently catching on. A ukulele is a musical instrument. Top businessmen Bill Gates and Warren Buffett both do it, and stressed-out city workers are following their lead. Here in the UK, a number of companies have been holding ukulele team-building sessions.
That sounds amazing. And is there anything about the ukulele in particular that leaves people feeling better after they played it?
Let's hear more about this from Lorraine Bowe, who teaches people to play the instrument. But listen with attention because she spoke on the phone and the line wasn't great.
Well, I guess it's just the fact that, people don't often sing in their everyday lives, and it's the fact that you can play and sing, play a musical instrument within an hour. It's quite a fulfilling thing, really. It's not competitive. It's quite easy to do, and it's a bit less intimidating than a guitar.
Lorraine, the ukulele teacher, also says her classes aren't competitive or intimidating.
Which means something that makes you feel nervous.
Now, before we hear the answer to today's quiz question, let's hear about a company in Abu Dhabi where leadership is taught through horse training. Basically, you have to go in the yard with a horse and persuade it that you're the boss by using body language. Here's Kelly Eade, co-founder of the company, explaining why she thinks this approach works.
The horses don't care if your hair is purple, if you're a man or a woman, if you're old or young, if you are what religion. So it transcends all of those cultural boundaries. It transcends age, gender, religion, tradition, etc. So that's a perfect fit. And in an organization where you really need groups of people to gel who come from backgrounds which have no common norms, you can teach that most efficiently with a horse.
To gel with someone means to connect or get on well with someone, so you try to get the horse to do what you want using body language. And the horse feels instinctively whether or not you are a natural leader because it doesn't recognise cultural differences, hair colour and age.
Probably easier said than done.
Indeed. Now remember, I asked, what did Chairman Mao introduce in China in 1951 as a compulsory activity for workers and was reintroduced by the government a few years ago? Was it A, calisthenics, B, calligraphy, or C, English language lessons?
I said A, calisthenics.
Well, you're right on the button. Well done there, Sophie. Calisthenics are used at schools as a warm-up for physical education classes during sports day activities and by some companies as a way of building morale and a sense of group unity, as well as to raise energy levels and encourage good health. Now, shake a leg, or in other words, get moving, and tell us the words we learned today.
They are away day, guru, team building, cerebral, boot camp, calisthenics, calligraphy, synchronize, intimidating, gel, shake a leg.
Well, that's the end of this 6 Minute English. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to join us again soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello, I'm Rob. Welcome to 6 Minute English. With me in the studio today is Neil. Hello, Neil.
Hello there, Rob.
Now, I bet you have an impressive CV, Neil. CV is short for curriculum vitae. That's a Latin expression we use for the document in which people list their work history, education, interests and abilities. In other parts of the English-speaking world, it's called a resume. Now, Neil, I know you're a very good teacher and producer, but does your CV actually shine?
Well, I hope it's good enough to impress hiring managers, but it's a challenge to prove on a piece of paper or online document that you're really better than the other people who are competing for the same position.
Today, we're talking about CVs, and you'll learn some words related to this topic, which will especially interest job seekers. That's what we call people looking for work.
Yes, and job seekers have to worry about having an impressive CV, so they get that call for a job interview.
Yes, the CV is just the beginning. And as you mentioned job interviews, I'll ask you a question all about this. According to a recent survey, managers decide quite quickly if they're going to really consider giving a candidate a job or not. So, when you go for a job interview, how long do you have, on average, to make a good enough impression for an employer to hire you? Do you have A, less than 3 minutes, B, less than 5 minutes, or C, less than 10 minutes?
Well, I think it's probably quite short, so I'm going to go for B, 5 minutes.
Well, you'll have the correct answer, the result of this survey, at the end of the programme. But people have done all sorts of unusual things to reach the interview level. One of them is Briton Daniel Conway, who went from posing shirtless in the street with the phrase "employ me" written on his chest to uploading a video on social media asking to be hired.
This video went viral. It means became popular very quickly. In it, his daughter appears next to the phrase, "Give my dad a job."
Yes, Daniel Conway tells us about his experience looking for work. Which word does he use when he says he wanted to be noticed?
I just thought as a young naive kid that I would kind of walk into a job, but the truth is, there are a lot of good people out there who've got just as great skills, and I realised at that point you've got to stand out and get your strengths across.
He used the phrasal verb to stand out. It means to be more visible than others in a group so that he can be noticed.
Dan Conway uses another phrasal verb, get your strengths across. To get something across means to make something clear. In this case, he wants the employer to understand how good he is as a potential employee, his strengths and his good qualities.
And did he get the job?
Well, yes, he did. And I'm glad to say that after 4 years, this 29-year-old man got a job marketing vitamins.
Well, we can say he was good at marketing himself.
Yes, we can. Well, he was bold and courageous in his attempts to catch potential employers' attention. He showed a quality described by career coach Corinne Mills. Listen to what she says and tell me, what is the quality job seekers have to show for sure?
Oh, you've got to be confident. I mean, if you're not confident about your skills and abilities, then why should an employer have faith in you? So don't be modest. This is your opportunity to really show your skills and experience and what a great performer you're going to be in the job.
The career coach says you've got to be confident. It means self-assured, believe in your capacity to do things. And sometimes we feel that it isn't nice to say, "I'm very good at this," or "Oh, I'm wonderful at that." But she advises you not to be modest.
Exactly. Modest means humble, moderate when talking about your abilities.
You know, Rob, I've got some top tips for people writing their CV.
OK, well, let's have them.
Yes, here's the first one. You have to be concise. It means brief. Give the information in a few words. Maybe you could write a brief profile at the top and keep the CV to just 2 pages.
Thank you, that's a good bit of advice. And I think you should give evidence of success in previous jobs. If a presentation you did helped you to get a client, you should include it there. And be accurate. In other words, be precise and tell the truth. Don't invent things.
And you should also remember to check your spelling and grammar.
Oh yes, that's very important. Well, we wish everybody success when writing and sending out their CV, and we hope they are called for a job interview, in which they have a very short period of time to leave a good impression.
Indeed. So how long, after all, is this period of time, according to your survey? Did I get the answer to the question you asked at the beginning of the programme right?
Well, I asked you, how long do you have, on average, to make a good enough impression for an employer to hire you? Do you have less than 3 minutes, less than 5 minutes, or less than 10 minutes?
And I said less than 5 minutes.
And you're wrong. The correct answer is actually less than 10 minutes, so you have a little bit longer. Job seekers have on average just 6 minutes and 25 seconds during the first meeting to impress potential employers. That's according to a new study from the website monster.co.uk. And we're almost out of time. So let's remember some of the words we said today. Neil.
CV. Viral. To stand out. Get your strengths across. Confident. Modest. Concise. Accurate.
Thank you. Well, that is it for today. Do log on to bbclearningenglish.com to find more 6-Minute English programmes. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
6-Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.
Welcome to 6-Minute English. I'm joined today by Finn. Hello, Finn. Finn? Hello, Finn.
Oh, sorry, Rob. You caught me napping.
Ah.
It's that time of day when I need to nod off, or in other words, fall asleep.
Well, sleeping on the job or sleeping at work is no bad thing. And I hope today's programme will wake you up to the idea that sleeping in the workplace might be a good thing.
Oh, really? Well, that's good to hear. I would have thought that sleeping at work was against the rules.
Well, not in every office, Finn, and I'll tell you why soon, as well as explaining some sleep-related vocabulary. But now you're wide awake, how about a question?
OK, let's hear it.
Right, well, when the former British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, was in power, she did her job with very little sleep. But do you know how many hours of sleep she is said to have had each night? Was it A, 3 hours, B, 4 hours, or C, 5 hours?
I always thought she got by, she managed her job with just 4 hours of sleep a night, Rob.
Right, not much, is it?
Well,
We'll find out if you're right or wrong later on. I'm not sure if she chose not to sleep for long or she just wasn't able to sleep for long. Someone who can't sleep is called an insomniac.
And I'm certainly not an insomniac. I enjoy sleeping all night and some of the day too. And Rob, you said napping during the day is a good thing.
Yes, it's always nice to have a short sleep, or what I call 40 winks during the day. But when you're at work, this can be a problem. In some companies like Google and the Huffington Post, workplace naps are positively encouraged. They're seen as a way to make staff more productive.
Yes, so you mean they work harder and are more creative because a power nap or a quick sleep can make workers feel refreshed and more alert. Now, I really like the sound of this, Rob.
Yeah, me too. And an Australian health writer called Thea O'Connor is a founder of a campaign called Nap Now, which is trying to make sleeping at work more acceptable. She calls herself a naptivist. Let's hear from her now. What does she say is stopping us from doing this?
I think that our culture is a bit crazy not to embrace it, and one of the reasons that we don't is our attitude. It's quite countercultural to do nothing in order to get ahead. I just really see that it's time to disrupt the prevailing work ethic, which is all about work longer and harder.
Right, so she wants us to embrace, that's to accept, the idea of a workplace power nap. But it's our attitude, the way we think about work, that stops society from accepting this.
Yes, she explains that it's countercultural, so going against the normal way of thinking, to actually do nothing and have a snooze.
That's why she's trying to change or to disrupt our current work ethic of working longer and harder. She believes this doesn't necessarily bring better results. But Rob, is this idea just a fad, something that's popular for a short while?
Maybe, but research has certainly shown that good quantity and quality of sleep is important for our well-being. A few years ago, research by the East of England Development Agency found 30% of people have their best ideas in bed, compared to just 11% who have them at their desk. It called for companies to install beds in the workplace.
Right, well, there aren't any in our office that I can see yet, Rob.
No.
But I think putting beds or areas for naps in the office would help us workers feel more able to rest and recharge our minds.
Yes, but an alternative idea would be to change our working hours. The UK's Sleep Council claims the 9-to-5 work culture doesn't fit into the natural sleeping pattern of the human race, and bosses need to introduce a more sleep-friendly working day.
Ooh, yes, that sounds like a siesta to me.
Uh-huh.
It's the short period of sleep in the middle of the day that people in warm places like Spain often have.
Well, my problem with a siesta is that if I have a sleep in the afternoon, I'd never wake up.
Never at all?
No.
Well, before you nod off now, Rob, could you please tell me the answer to today's question?
Yes, I asked you if you knew how many hours of sleep the former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher is said to have had each night. Was it 3, 4 or 5 hours?
I said 4 hours, Rob. Was I right?
Indeed, Finn, you are right.
Wow.
4 hours.
For once.
Yes, it's often been said that she needed just 4 hours of sleep, but only on weekdays, not weekends.
Long light weekends.
Well, before you have another power nap, could you remind us of some of the vocabulary that we've heard today?
Of course, we heard napping, nod off, sleeping on the job, insomniac, 40 winks, power nap, naptivist, attitude, countercultural, work ethic, well-being, 9 to 5, siesta.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's programme. Please join us again soon for another 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English. Bye-bye. Back to sleep.
6 Minute English.
From BBC Learning English.